June 5th, 1967. The Six-Day War erupts across the Middle East. Israel is fighting. Egypt, Jordan, and Syria on 3 fronts. The region is a powder keg, and the United States is officially neutral. But neutrality doesn't mean blind. The USS Liberty is stationed in the Eastern Mediterranean with a classified mission. She is a signals intelligence ship, a floating listening post packed with some of the most sensitive electronic surveillance equipment the National Security Agency possesses. Her crew of 294 men are not fighting a war. They are listening to one, intercepting communications between the belligerents, reporting what they hear back to Washington. The Navy has assigned the Liberty to a position off the coast of the Sinai Peninsula. She is in international waters, more than 12 nautical miles from the Egyptian shore. The ship is unarmed. Her hull is painted white. A large American flag flies from the mast. The 5-foot letters on her side read GTR-5. In the Mediterranean, on a clear day, every ship within miles can read it. June 8th, 1967. A clear morning with no clouds. The sea is calm, the sun bright, visibility excellent. The crew goes about their routine. Some are at their listening posts, others are relaxing on deck. No one expects trouble. The war is 100 miles away. They are Americans in international waters. The ship is clearly marked. What happens next will become one of the most fiercely disputed incidents in modern American naval history. At 1:58 p.m., 3 Israeli fighter aircraft appear on the horizon. Dassault Mirage 3s, French-built, the pride of the Israeli Air Force. They approach from the north. The crew watches them come, curious, uncertain, assuming the pilots are running a routine identification pass. The first pass changes everything. The aircraft open fire with cannons. Machine gun rounds tear through the ship's antennas and communications equipment. Rockets hit the deck, starting fires in the fuel storage areas. The bridge is hit. The American flag is shot down. Men who were standing on deck moments ago are now running for cover, wounded or dead. The crew manages to get a new flag flying. It is shot down again. For nearly 2 hours, the Liberty is attacked by Israeli forces. First aircraft, then torpedo boats, then aircraft again. The aircraft make multiple passes, strafing the deck and superstructure, dropping napalm on the ship. The flames spread quickly. The medical staff is overwhelmed. The ship's primary means of communication is destroyed in the first pass, cutting the crew off from the outside world. Then the torpedo boats arrive. 3 Israeli torpedo boats approach from the north, moving fast, firing their machine guns at the Liberty's hull and superstructure. They circle the ship, raking it with fire. One of the torpedo boats launches a torpedo at the American vessel. It strikes the Liberty on the starboard side, directly beneath the waterline. The explosion tears a hole in the ship's hull, kills 25 sailors instantly, and sends a plume of water and debris high into the air. The ship begins taking on water. The crew fights the flooding for hours, sealing off compartments and jettisoning equipment to keep her afloat. The torpedo boats continue their attack. They fire at the life rafts, preventing the crew from abandoning ship. Survivors will later describe the sound of rounds hitting the water around them, the smell of smoke and burning fuel, the sight of their shipmates being torn apart by the explosions. One of the torpedo boats approaches the Liberty and signals the ship. The signal is a request for the Liberty to surrender. The crew responds by sending a message back. This is a United States Navy ship operating in international waters. We are not your enemy. Cease fire immediately. The torpedo boats continue their attack. The crew finally manages to get a distress message through on a backup radio. The signal is received by a naval station in Greece. They report the attack to their commanders. The USS Saratoga, an American aircraft carrier in the region, is ordered to launch aircraft to defend the Liberty. The carrier's crew prepares for takeoff. The jets are armed, the pilots are ready. They are minutes away from saving American lives. The orders are countermanded. The aircraft never launch. A later investigation reveals that President Lyndon Johnson had been briefed on the Liberty's position and the attack. He ordered the Navy to stand down twice. By the time the attack stops, 34 Americans are dead. 171 are wounded. Some will die later from their injuries. The survivors spend the next hour fighting fires and flooding, trying to keep the ship from sinking. The ship is a smoking, listing wreck. The fires burn for hours. Israel apologizes immediately. The attack, they say, was a tragic case of mistaken identity. The Liberty had been misidentified as an Egyptian supply ship. The pilots and torpedo boat commanders made an error in the fog of war. The United States government accepts the explanation. The survivors return to the United States to find that the incident is already being buried. Official reports are classified. Survivors are told not to discuss what happened. Some are threatened with courts-martial for speaking publicly. The Navy publishes a report that is heavily redacted. The survivors are not allowed to read the full transcript. The matter is closed. But the survivors never accept it. They point to the details that don't fit. The Liberty was clearly marked. The American flag was flying. The ship's hull number was visible. Israeli pilots had been trained to identify American vessels. They had identified the Liberty earlier that day. They had photographed her. They knew the ship was American. The attack lasted nearly 2 hours. Mistaken identity, survivors argue, might explain a single strafing run. It doesn't explain a sustained assault by multiple aircraft and torpedo boats. It doesn't explain why the torpedo boats machine-gunned the life rafts. It doesn't explain why the aircraft dropped napalm on the deck. The survivors also point to the timing. Israel had been warned that American ships were operating in the area. They had been told not to attack them. The attack on the Liberty came just hours after the United States had intercepted and relayed a message warning Israel not to strike American positions. The United States conducts 2 official investigations. The first is a Navy inquiry, classified almost entirely. The second is a court of inquiry convened immediately after the attack. Most of the testimony is sealed. The survivors are not permitted to read the full transcript until decades later. Israel conducts its own investigation. It concludes the attack was a tragic error. The United States officially accepts that conclusion. The survivors continue to speak. They publish their own accounts. They testify before Congress. They argue that the evidence points to something else. They claim that Israel attacked the Liberty because she was listening to communications they didn't want intercepted. The evidence for that claim is disputed. The intercepted communications were, by all accounts, routine signals intelligence. Nothing in the declassified transcript suggests the Liberty had gathered anything that would justify a deliberate attack. But the survivors argue the NSA isn't releasing the full record. They argue there are still significant gaps. One NSA analyst who examined the material later concludes the evidence points to a deliberate attack. His conclusion is never published. His name remains largely unknown outside the community that has studied the Liberty case. The Israeli government never changes its position. The attack was a tragic mistake. They apologize. They pay compensation to the families of the dead and wounded. They consider the matter closed. The United States government never revisits the case at the highest levels. In 1990, a group of survivors files a lawsuit against Israel and the United States, seeking compensation for their injuries and what they describe as a cover-up. The case is dismissed. The courts rule the government has the authority to settle such matters. The survivors are denied their day in court. A later review by a State Department official concludes the attack was a tragic mistake. The official cites intelligence intercepts showing Israeli commanders were genuinely convinced the ship was Egyptian. The survivors dismiss the review as inadequate. They argue the State Department is protecting Israel for diplomatic reasons. The USS Liberty is salvaged and repaired. She is decommissioned in 1968, less than a year after the attack, and eventually scrapped. Her logs and records are sealed. Some of the survivors continue to speak publicly. They are interviewed on television. They give testimony in Congress. They write books. They're never able to change the official record. The debate over the USS Liberty has never fully gone away. For some, it is an enduring symbol of American complicity in the protection of Israel's military actions. For others, it is a tragic accident that has been exploited by conspiracy theorists. The evidence remains contested. Neither side has ever fully convinced the other. What remains is an unresolved contradiction. The attack lasted 2 hours. The ship was clearly marked. 34 American sailors died. And the official explanation has never fully satisfied the survivors. The attack is past. The argument never ended.